There we go. Still figuring out how to use this. I see people use this, but I'm still learning how to get to it myself. But that besides, so uh, usually, I guess for the past 2 weeks, I've just been talking about like the regular things I talk about on this channel, which is like Christian things. But I thought that it would be interesting if I talked about current events and kind of reviewed them and critiqued them from a Christian perspective. So let me know what you guys think about this. Uh, just seeing what is going on in the world and seeing what's happening in the news and, judging it based off of a fundamental Baptist perspective or fundamental Christian perspective. And so the first story I want to get to is 9/11. That happened this past week, the memorial of that. And it seems so crazy to think that we've reached a point in American society where 9/11 is an afterthought. Like, that was not even remotely one of the biggest stories of this week. And yet it was a day that, has forever changed America. But I guess it's like, well, how much has it really changed America? And in some ways, it has, forever permanently changed it. And in other ways, I guess people are forgetting. So like someone like me who's 25, I don't remember 9/11 and I don't have super intimate feelings towards it. Uh, like the only reason I even know what I was doing is because my dad told me. And we even lived in New York at the time. And so my parents were just shaken to the core. But and then I think my older brothers, I think they might know. I think they might have remembered. I read lipstick by. um, so yeah, I think that they probably remember because they're older. They're like in their 30s now. But as for me, I don't remember it at all. My dad says that we were watching TV and we lived in Queens. So we even lived in the boroughs at this time. And so we were living in Queens and it was just my dad and I at home. And he was trying to find something for me to watch on TV. And I'm just like sitting in front of the TV kind of playing, I guess, with my toys. And he flips to a channel which is the news, which he doesn't realize. and and he sees like he sees it as it's on. He sees that the first tower is on fire. The second tower hasn't even hit yet. He's like, "What movie is this?" And then he sees the other tower get hit, and he's like, just completely dumbfounded. And he calls my mom and tells her to go pick up my brother from school. So yeah, uh, to go home. How old were you, realistic vibes, when that happened? And what building? Like, were you at work or were you at school? Uh, and yeah, and so I mean that's just you, and you think of that as being such a monumental, colossal thing that happened, and now it just kind of feels like, oh yeah, 9/11, never forget. And it's just like it's just so not as serious as it once was. Like I remember being in school and like we had to like do a moment of silence, and we did a moment of silence every morning at my school, but it was like a special one. And even in elementary school, like we would like paint flags, and it was a big deal. And now it's just like, because some football coach out in Michigan was having phone sex, now all of a sudden we don't care about the Twin Towers anymore. Oh my goodness, you were in Washington D.C. That's crazy. So you were, yeah. No wonder they rushed you. I told you to go home. So, man, like it's just, I don't know. It just kind of blows my mind that it it is just so seen as so unserious now. And I guess like when it comes to like airports and stuff, it'll always be, well, it'll never be the same, and it'll always be a reminder of what happened. But when it comes to day to day, like I don't think people are really affected by it anymore. I don't think people really think about it anymore. And I think a large part of that is because of the narrative around it and how, at first people cared because, of course, it was fresh in their mind, but we all had an idea of what we thought happened, and we all had an idea of what they told us happened. And now, like, half the country doesn't agree on the official narrative. And so they're like, oh, it was an inside job, it was staged, it was fake. I even saw a video one time that said that there were never any airplanes at all. An airplane never even hits Twin Towers. And I was just like, okay. I love a conspiracy theory as much as the next conservative, but that's too much. That's too much for me. So yeah. And another thing I want to do, if I'm going to continue to do a like a news recap instead of talking about a specific Christian topic, is I want to have a Bible verse that applies to whatever story I might be covering. And so I thought that Revelation chapter 18 verses 9 and 10 were a kind of a good verse uh, to reference with this story. Uh, and it is, and the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning, standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. Now, I think that sounds very fitting of what happened in 9/11. But you let me know what you guys think. Only people that may have lost family and friends, but day-to-day people aren't thinking about it. Yeah, yeah, I think that is definitely the sentiment. That when it comes to just regular people, they're like, oh, you know, if I'm not gonna get the day off work, I really don't care. Like, I think that that is basically the feeling about it now, which is sad. Because whether or not it was an inside job or not, you know, that I don't even know how many people died. I like 1,000 or something. You know, those people they still died. You know, whether it was actual terrorists or whether it was our own government, people still died. And that's still very sad. So, but what are you gonna do? So, next thing I want to talk about, yeah, yeah, exactly. Next thing I want to talk about is this Mel Tucker situation, and I've been hearing a lot about this. I've watched two separate videos about this, and I've been reading into it. And the story is very interesting because it covers a lot of different things. Like it has a lot of different facets to it that I think are very timely. And I haven't heard a woman talk about this yet. And so I'm sure there are, but I haven't seen one. And I think that it's very important to talk about this from a woman's perspective because it's not just a man. There's a woman involved, and I think that spoiler alert, I think that she is lying. I do not believe her story, and we're gonna get into why I don't believe that. But let's pull up this news story. I was uh I was playing with the settings, and so I think I'm gonna be able to show you guys what I'm seeing. Let's see here. Okay. All right. So yes, that should be showing up. And so yes, basically, there's a lot to be said about this story. When they met, the timeline, all that stuff. But for me, the crux of it and the most important thing that I want to touch on is this little passage right here, which says, and I don't know if you guys can read it or not. Let me know if you can actually read that red lipstick vibe. But basically it says, and let me know if when I leave the screen, if you can, well, let me just make it the whole screen. Well, that doesn't make it any bigger. But let's see here. Does it make it? Do I go away? Can you still see me? Okay. I see it. Okay. That's good. All right. This part right here, it says, during that time, the two also talked on the phone at least 10 times. And so above it is saying how, they met and they were fond of each other. They started to build a relationship. And so it says they talked on the phone at least 27 times. Tracy's phone bill shows an average of once every 2 weeks for a half hour. They often spoke at night to accommodate their work schedules. Right. Sure, that's why. um, they said they chatted about their jobs and eventually more personal matters such as their families, mental health, and daily life. They spoke most frequently in fall of 2021, while Tucker was leading Michigan State to a 11-2 record, its best season in 6 years. And so, yeah, we're talking about, thank you. We're talking about a man who is married. Okay, first off, he's married. She's not married. So, first problem, we have a married man on the phone late at night with an unmarried woman. That's a red flag number one. Secondly, this woman, she's like on this tour going around to all these different colleges talking about this trauma that she experienced. She's allegedly a sexual abuse victim. And that's the original story of why she's even at the colleges in the first place. That story doesn't even pass the sniff test, let alone this one currently. But I'm gonna get into that in a second. So she's going around to all these colleges, trauma dumping on all these young, men, these 20 somethings who were in college, and she's telling them about how she was molested and all this stuff, and she was at a party. That's kind of funny. Yes, and so she's doing that. She has no business doing that. I think that that's completely inappropriate because that's not her place to do that. I feel like to have a woman to come to these colleges and talk to these men about how, oh yes, this is what happened to me and I was victimized and all this stuff. It's like they don't need to hear about your personal story, because that just seems inappropriate for a single woman to be going up and talking to all these young men about how she was molested in this mixed company like this. It's tactless and it's tacky is what it is. And so, yeah, I think that if you're going to be a woman and you're going to talk about that, you should talk about it in broader terms. Because first off, the whole concept of going around to colleges on this parade of talking about, oh, men shouldn't rape. Yeah, any man with any two brain cells thread together already knows that. The problem is not that men don't know not to take advantage of a woman who's drunk. The issue is that people don't care, and you're not gonna change the feelings of someone who just doesn't care about stuff like that. So there's no point in doing that in the first place, in my opinion. And then she says that because the whole encounter is over the phone, this one that happened with Mel Tucker, it's on the phone. So why didn't she hang up? I mean, that's one of the first things that I keep hearing from other people that I'm hearing talk about this is that why did she hang up? And it's like in the article, she says it never occurred to her to hang up. And it's like, how old is this woman? So she didn't realize how phones work. So that's another issue. Another issue is that this happened in April, I believe, April 28th. Why did she wait so long to file it if she's already been a victim of sexual assault? And one of the biggest things about sexual assault that they tell us is that you need to report it as soon as it happens. You need to report it right away so you can collect the most DNA, have the strongest case, produce the most evidence to get a conviction. So why are you, as someone who's an activist, who's an outspoken person, trying to advocate for reform in this area, why are you not practicing what you're preaching? Why are you not doing what you're supposed to be doing? Yeah, it is crazy. It's nonsense. It doesn't add up. So I, as a woman, I think that we as women need to hold other women accountable. We need to hold their feet to the fire. And this whole time's up, Me Too stuff, it's it's been completely overblown because women who actually get assaulted, who actually get molested, they're just caught in the crosshairs and they're just swept down the river because stories like this that don't make any sense get the publication. And just like how that crazy black woman in Alabama who faked her own kidnapping, this other woman who lied about getting hit in the head with a brick, mattress girl, the Duke lacrosse team, like it just goes on and on. That girl who I don't know the football player's name, but he was a football player and he I think he had just like started out and he got caught up in some rape allegations that he was at a college football party and he took advantage of he was like one of three men who took advantage of this woman who later turned out she was lying. And it's like it's just this constant like repeated cycle of women lying about these men. And it's like when are we going to actually start talking about that instead of always want to run back to always victim blaming? It's not victim blaming. I thought women were strong and independent. I thought women were just as smart as men. I thought that women could take care of themselves and hold their own. But yeah, we want to coddle them when it comes to actually being responsible for our actions. Oh, so and so he groped me when I was at a party and I was blackout drunk. Well, why were you blackout drunk? It's like it's like when it's like the story about this woman who in London, she got choked out by the store owner. And it's like, we need to fight for her because that could have been you. No, it could have been me because I'm not going into the store and I'm not stealing. So it's like, oh, this man, he groped me, he touched me, he did X, Y, and Z to me when I was drunk. Oh, well, that there's reasons why that happened, and if we can be, that would never happen to me because I'm not going to a party and getting drunk, you know. So it's like, what do other women doing who are not ending up in these situations? What are they doing? They want to believe all women. Yeah, sure. They claim they want to believe all women until the woman is a conservative. Another one, Christine Blasey Ford, the woman who accused Brett Kavanaugh of this, gang rape, but that other people who were at the party claimed never happened. And as soon as he got confirmed, she went back into the woodwork from where she came. And I'm sure more examples are going to pop up into my mind as I'm talking. And it's ridiculous that we see this happen time and time again. It's a pattern. These women, they lie for attention or for money. And I heard one person say that what probably happened is that they were having a romantic relationship and she wanted more. She wanted him to leave his wife, or she wanted him to, do more than he was comfortable with. And, she threatened him, with blackmail, saying, you need to do this or I'm going to go public. And he didn't do it. And now this phone call that happened 8 months ago, that he was on the phone for like half an hour, that, now all of a sudden, oh, now it wasn't consensual. I didn't want it. This was wrong. He did something wrong to me. And it's like, and I also saw somewhere that she texted him Happy Father's Day 2 months after this phone call where she was allegedly, I don't even know what, harassed, because he didn't rape her, it was through the phone. So I guess where he sexually harassed her, she texted him Happy Father's Day 2 months later. That doesn't sound like something you would say to someone who sexually harassed you. And I just think it's just so egregious because there are real victims in this world, and there are real people who get taken advantage of and who are really actual victims who were doing everything right. And then you have people who just don't want to take responsibility, don't want to take accountability, and they abuse the system. And it's sick. And we, as women, you and I, Red Lipstick Vibes, and whatever other women might watch this, we need to stand up and speak out about it because it's not right. And so I think it's absolutely ridiculous. But there's another faction which are saying like, oh, this is absurd. Because there are men who are thinking like me and thinking like, oh yeah, she's obviously lying, and so Mel Tucker is innocent. But it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Innocence is a reach. Because like I said at the beginning, he's still married. And the issue is not that whether or not they did or didn't have phone sex. The issue is that whether or not it was consensual. So he admitted to having phone sex with her, which is wrong. And the verse I picked for this, the Bible verse to talk about this, is Numbers 32:23, which says, "But if you will not do so, behold, ye have sinned against the Lord, and be sure your sin will find you out." So you can't hide what you do in private, friends. You think like, oh, I'm gonna do this. Oh, I'm gonna sneak here and go there and talk to this person, and you think you're under the cloak of darkness and that everything is all fine and dandy until something like this happens where you thought like, oh, okay, I'm gonna just have me a little side piece and I'm gonna just have sex with her over the phone. I'm never touching her. It's all good. Oh, great. Now you're suspended without pay and in jeopardy of losing $95 million. So it wasn't really worth it. And so, yeah, as much as I do think that, it's only a matter of time before more information comes out to where we find that this was obviously a lie that this woman is saying, like she knew it, that she knew what was happening. She wanted it to happen. She was into it. And another thing, being a conservative, aren't we always saying that the government is always listening, Big Brother is always watching? Don't they record all of our phone calls? Like, can't they actually just produce the phone call in question and play it back? Or is that just like we say that they do that, but they actually don't? Or like, can't the court just subpoena the phone call itself so we can put all this to bed? Because like, if she says like, oh, that she hears it and she's into it and she's saying stuff to get him off or whatever. Like, can't we just open and shut this? Like, so I don't know. But yeah, she is definitely lying. That much we know for certain. But to say that he is, just being railroaded and this is, just another black man, being taken down by white women is also absurd because he is just as stupid as she is because he had no business messing with her in the first place. And so when you lie down with dogs, you get fleas. Okay. And so the next thing I want to talk about is that allegedly aliens were found in Mexico. Let me pull this one up. So here in the Hindustan Times, I've never heard of them, but I thought they're two non-human alien corpses unveiled in Mexico's Congress. Report says UFOologist. Wait, is that what it says? Okay, UFOologist Jamie Mosen said these specimens are not part of our terrestrial evolution. Now, when it comes to aliens and extraterrestrials and things like that, like the reason why I wanted to talk about this is not because I find it particularly valid or whatever. Like, I think the scientist who produced this, like, he's known for kind of like fudging the evidence and like coming up with crackpot, studies and being like not the most truthful. So I'm not pulling this up as to say like, oh, now we have the smoking gun because now we have these fossils or whatever. But I think it's interesting because as a Christian, I believe things because of what the Bible says. And I want to know what you guys feel about aliens because personally, I don't believe in aliens, but I can't produce a verse that explicitly says that, there is no life on other planets. So, and I just think this is a conversation I've had with different people over years. And, I've had friends who were like, yeah, aliens definitely exist. And, it doesn't conflict with Christianity. The Bible can still be true and there can still be aliens. But I just don't see that. And so my reasoning as to why I think that that's bunk is because Jesus, it says that Jesus paid for the sins of the world. So aliens, do they have souls? Did he pay for their sins? Do they have, do they have a Bible? Like, how does Jesus and salvation fit into the scheme when you have aliens? And are they sentient or are they, because like animals, when they die, they just go into the earth, like nothing happens to them. They don't have souls. So are aliens like that? And if it's like, if they are like that, then how could they be so intelligent as to have, interdimensional travel or extraterrestrial travel and things like that? So I don't know. I think that it's worth talking about because a lot of people really do take this stuff seriously. And I don't think that they find it valid to just kind of brush away by saying like, oh, like, that's cartoon stuff, that's movie stuff, that's not legitimate. Because there's been like a weird uptick in alien activity lately. Like there've been some whistleblowers coming out saying, that there have been aircrafts that are unhuman in origin and different things like that. And so there was like some Peruvian people in a remote village who said they saw some face peeling aliens or something. So I think that, it's people are genuinely wondering and people are genuinely looking for answers about this. And I have not been able to come up with an answer definitively one way or another. The Bible verse that I picked to address this is just Genesis 1:1 that says, "In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth," not different heavens and different earths and different galaxies and like when the Bible talks about creation and it talks about how He spoke the world into existence and all the things that He created, I just don't see other extraterrestrial life kind of fitting into that. And then it's like, if they're not in the Bible, then how do they fit in? It's just like, how do they fit in is my thing, you know? And so I think it's something that we as Christians should be more willing to talk with someone about, because someone genuinely might want an answer, and we should want to give an answer as to things that we believe. I think another good verse um, is the verse that talks about testing the spirits. And so, like there was a family, I think like in Arizona or Nevada, who said that some aliens touched down in their backyard. So if you're ever in a position where some aliens are looking you square in the face, ask them who they think Jesus is. And if they don't think that he's God, then you know that, okay, you might be an alien, but what you are is an antichrist. Because who is he that is antichrist except he that denies that Jesus is the Lord or Jesus is the Christ? Oh no, Jesus is the Messiah. Yeah. And so, yeah. Uh, so when it comes to aliens, this is just another story along with ones that have been popping up that made me think like, what is happening? Because a lot of people, who used to believe in aliens, ironically, are no longer believing because they're like, oh well, the government is confirming it, so now I know for a fact that it's not true because all the government does is lie, which is valid. But it's like it's not really the main government who's promoting it or talking about it. It's whistleblowers. So do you believe in whistleblowers? Like it seems like they're still trying to cover it up to an extent, but some people are seeing things that are just too freaky and too unexplainable that they need to talk about it. I don't know. Like, but as of right now, my stance is that they are not real. They're probably just demons playing with people, trying to confuse people, distracting people. And that's another thing I've heard is that, oh, this is all a distraction. There's something important going on whenever all this alien talk pops up that they're trying to distract us from. And it's like, I don't think the government is trying to distract us with it because the government is not the one who's putting the information out there. But I do think that, the devil is trying to distract us from things because if you're thinking like, oh, there's aliens, there's life on other planets, there's other galaxies, and I mean there are other galaxies. I do believe in space, okay, but there's other life on other planets, and there's intelligent life, and you're gonna start thinking like, oh, we need to try to talk to them and figure out what they think because if they're so much smarter, then we should believe what they believe. And then if you meet an alien and it tells you Jesus isn't God and believe X, Y, and Z, then that's a distraction. And so I think that's really what's happening is that these are demons that are here to just confuse people um, and lead people off on a wonky road of just anything but Jesus. I mean, because the devil, he's here to kill, steal, and destroy, and by any means. That's why there's not just one false religion. There's millions. There's big ones like Hinduism and Buddhism and uh, Islam and Catholicism, and then there's little ones that are regional and tribal. Everything that isn't Jesus is a distraction, is confusion that he just wants to muddy your path. And so I think that this is probably just another one of those things. But hey, I'm open to having my mind changed. Okay, there are a lot of things I'm dogmatic about. This is not one of them. So yes, I wanted to bring that up. And another story that I thought was interesting, not specifically this story as a whole, because the next thing is about Olivia Rodrigo, and she as an individual does not really excite me exactly. I listened to her first album. Um, what is it? Sour was what it is. I listened to that first album. I liked it. I felt like it sounded good because I grew up in the early 2000s and like that pop rock was in, and I just I wanted to listen to it. It was everywhere, and it sounded good, but I could definitely see how it's not godly. It's not something I should be indulging in. But the really thing what I want to talk about is not her specifically, but this phenomenon of like really depressing music. And I think maybe another example, well, definitely another example would be like someone like Billie Eilish and just all these different young artists popping up and who are just always singing about sad things and singing about how life doesn't have any meaning and life is awful and everything is so sad. And it's just like, where, I almost want to say, where is this coming from? But of course, we know where it's coming from because these people are not Christians. These people don't have Jesus as their only hope. They're trusting in this world. They're trusting in their money, in, the things of this world to satisfy them, to bring them meaning and purpose. And it will never do that. And I find it almost ironic because I saw a post the other day on Instagram, and it was saying like, music in the mid 2000s made me think I was gonna party all the time, and it was just the era of party music, with party rock anthem and Kesha, and that was like all she talked about was partying, and the Black Eyed Peas that was talking about partying, and Mike Posner, and just all these different artists and songs that it's just like, when you get to be an adult, like life is just a big party. And then like a decade and a half later, it's the complete opposite. It's like, oh my goodness, life is so awful. Men are trash. Nothing's worth living, and it's just so depressing. And people are just eating it up, fork and spoon. Because I saw this and I saw that she added more dates to her tour, and how she was performing at the VMAs. I didn't watch that, but I saw a clip that she was performing at the VMAs. Apparently, Selena Gomez was very unimpressed. And it's just like, why are why is there such a switch? Because the songs in the early 2000s, those weren't godly songs. Those weren't godly artists talking about partying and drinking and smoking and doing all that stuff. So why such a change? And I mean, there's still party music, but what's really popular right now is this sad, self-loathing, depressing music, and it's really popular with women primarily, and it's young women. And I just think, how sad, is it that, women in by the droves are, on antidepressants, and they're just, sad and miserable. And it's like, I think men are more likely to commit suicide, if I'm not mistaken. They're more likely to do that, but women are much more likely to be on antidepressants and rate and say that their lives are unhappy or being unfulfilled. And so I think that's very unfortunate, because it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to sleep around with 100 guys and come to the conclusion that they're all trash, when you could just do what God said, and do things and live your life the godly way, and be a Christian and have peace and joy and fulfillment. And it's like, you just want to reach out and give these people a hug. And it's like, girl, it's gonna be all right. And like her, I haven't listened to any of her new music in completion, but I've heard clips from her song Vampire. And I heard someone, these stands online, they're always examining music, and then people saying that, it sounds like her new music is saying that she was kind of taken advantage of by an older man. Whether that be, I don't think they mean like just being, molested or whatever. I think they mean like she was in love with him and they had a relationship, and he was a part of her upcoming in the music industry. I think that's what they're trying to say. Maybe like a Dr. Luke scenario. Put scare quotes around Dr. Luke, because that whole thing turned out to be a lie with him and Kesha. Another example, like what I was saying earlier. And so, yeah. And it's like, man, I hope that that's not the case. That this music is not the result of that, but it very well likely could be, because that happens a lot. People, they reduce their morals and their values to get into the music industry and to be popular. And it's like, at what cost? If you're really going to be so sick with yourself and so upset with how your life is going, why bother? And people, they're just living for a dollar, and they're just living for a check, and they're just living for fame, and they're just living for, status and prestige and things that you can get. And it's like, man, what a vain and empty life. What a meaningless existence to chase all that, and to think that that's going to fulfill you, and to think that that's going to solve your problems. And so, we need to pray for these young people coming up today. Because Olivia, she's only 20, I think. No older than 21. I think she's 20. And this music is resonating with a lot of young people. A lot of like young people. I say that like I'm so old. I'm only 25. And so But this music, it's resonating with a lot of people in this, in my age group and younger, and they just feel like, what's the point? And I just think that this is just a very symptomatic of the society that we have and how we're just in these late stages of Marxism and these late stages of atheism, how we've kicked out God from society, but now there's a God-sized hole, and people are feeling it, and and this music is just a symptom of it, and it's selling like hotcakes, you know. So how sad. Um, and so the verse I have for this is First Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 13, which says, "But I would not have you to be ignorant, brethren, concerning them which are asleep, that ye sorrow not, even as others which have no hope." And so I think that that is just so fitting, because these people who have no hope, they're sorrowful. Like, the Billie Eilishes and the Olivia Rodrigos and uh, there's another one whose name is escaping me right now, but they sing about all this sad, Lana Del Rey. They sing about all this sad music, and it's just, oh, it's so unfortunate, and it's just like, man, there is so much to be happy about. There is so much, to sing about and to be joyful about. And yeah, the economy is trash. Yeah, a lot of people on the dating market are trash. And you have to navigate life, and uh, things aren't always going to be rainbows and sunshine. But when you have Christ, when you have redemption, when you're saved, from hell, and you know that you can't lose it, let's get back on that. Then you have joy, and life is good, and you know that, hey, whatever happens, it is well with my soul. And so, it's so sad to think about these young people today who are just so disillusioned with everything, and can you blame them? So those are the three main stories I want to talk about. But I have some other secondary stories that caught my eye because they involve people in Virginia, and that's where I live. And so I'm like, Virginia is it's a very nutty state. I think it's because of its placement in the country and how we're at the top of the Mason-Dixon line. I mean, at the top of the bottom, I guess that what they're saying, because we're in the South, but we're like at the beginning of the South. So we have a lot of Northerners, and Northerners are crazy, and we have a lot of, and we have Southerners, and it's very military. So we have people from all over who are in here, and there's mountains and there's beach, and I don't know. And then it's also a swing state, so I think that that's why. But Virginia is a crazy state. So some things that are going on in Virginia is that Glenn Youngkin gave a pardon. Who Glenn Youngkin is our governor. He gave a pardon to this father whose daughter was molested at school by, I don't know if he identifies as like a transgender or if he's just a cross dresser, but by a boy at her school. And I think the dad like went to the school board meeting and like called the ruckus, and they arrested him. And so Glenn Youngkin gave him a pardon. And Glenn Youngkin really, I don't know. I thought he was going to be more of like a Ron DeSantis type. And saying that, Ron DeSantis has joined the presidential candidacy and kind of just faded off into oblivion. But I thought that he was kind of gonna govern like Ron DeSantis and really crack down. And Virginia not being one of the states that immediately like outlawed abortion when Roe vs. Wade was overturned really upset me, because it just seems so obvious. And he just campaigned on family values and being a champion of parents and being a champion for the people. And it's like, where are you, Glenn? And I saw him on Face the Nation around that time, and he was talking about, the news reporter. She asked him, she was like, "Oh, are you gonna, outlaw abortion in Virginia?" And he gave a very rhino answer. And I don't think that he's a rhino. I think that he is conservative. I mean, he's a Republican. I don't know how far I would say he's conservative, but this is a good move. This is a Glenn Youngkin W. So he does not impress me as much as I wanted him to, as much as I thought that he would. But hey, you gotta take the wins where you can get them, especially in the Republican Party, because they're kind of slim. I heard a story about this woman named Renee Bach, and there's a docu-series coming out about her on HBO Max called Savior Complex. And she's from Virginia. I think she's from Northern Virginia. And she apparently, she's maybe my age now, but a few years ago, she went to, see, I should have pulled it up on my phone, but I think she either, let me see, she either went to Uganda or Ghana. I can't remember which one right now. Renee Bach. Let's see here. Which country did she go to? I think it was Uganda. Yes, it was Uganda. So yes, it's this white woman who goes to Uganda. She's like 18 or 19 when she goes there, and she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna save all the little Ugandan kids," and she's like doing medical services on them, but she's not a nurse. She has no medical qualifications, and she's just over there kind of doing it how she wants to. And she has people who are working for her or working with her, and like 105 Ugandan children die under her supervision. And yeah, it's really sad. I'm gonna watch the documentary, the docu series when it comes out to see, because she's in it and she's defending herself. She's like, I didn't kill anybody. This was a freak accident. The media is trying to paint me in a certain light, and it looks bad. It looks very damning. So, but I'm excited to see it. And so that's something that's going on. This happened a few years ago, but the docu series is coming out at the end of the month, and so that's why it's back in the news. And I can't believe I didn't hear about this sooner. I guess this happened like right before COVID, so maybe that's why it didn't get the buzz that it deserved. Like, because whether or not she is necessarily directly responsible, that remains to be seen. But that should be a big deal. Just 100 and something. I think it's 105. Kids at this place where they're supposed to be getting healed, supposed to be getting better, are dying. It's like, okay, what's going on with that? So there's that. And one of the main things I want to talk about once I heard about it is something else that's also going on in Virginia, is that there's a literal prostitute running for Senate as a Democrat, but I didn't have to tell you that. And so basically, she's not like a street prostitute, like a hooker, but she's an online prostitute, and which is pretty much the same. A difference without a distinction, as far as I'm concerned. Because if you're having sex for money, you're having sex for money, and you're a prostitute. And so this woman, she like would make these live streams on this porn site with her husband of all people, and post them and like solicit money from her viewers. And apparently, what happened is that people recorded it, obviously, because nothing that you do on the internet is ever going to go away. You should always think of the internet as being eternal as much as something earthly can be eternal. And she is now claiming that people are leaking her videos when she made them public at the time. Now, the website itself did not record the videos, but I guess people who watched it had to record it. So she's saying, like, no, this is an invasion of my privacy because this shouldn't technically be available anymore because it shouldn't be recorded. But that's just completely dishonest and very immature to think that, you're a grown woman, you're running for Senate, for Pete's sake, and you think that people aren't going to record you if you're performing sex acts online, especially since at least one of them was done after she announced her campaign. And it's like, how far have we as people fallen to think like this woman should be run out of town? I mean, her campaign should have immediately been discontinued. She should have been publicly shamed by the entire Democratic Party, along with, anyone who knew her. She's on Twitter. She's denouncing this. She's saying like, oh, I can't believe that people are trying to, this is revenge porn. They're trying to shame me. They're trying to, say things about me that aren't true. And it's like, you did it. We're not saying anything that's not true. We're not creating some deep fake AI porn of you and your husband. This is what you did. And it's like, it's so absurd to think that we can live in a country and people want to be taken seriously and they had sex for money online. It's almost laughable. It would be laughable if it wasn't so sad and grotesque and disgusting. And, I'm a person that believes that people can change, people can be redeemed. If someone moves forward, then, we should, accept that they're a different person and try to, forgive and forget. And I completely agree with that. We should not just continue to hold things over people's heads that they claim, they're moved past. Praise God for redemption. But this is not that case. This woman is not claiming that she's turned over a new leaf. She's not denouncing the videos in general. She's denouncing the fact that people are shaming her and people are clowning her and trying to derail her campaign due to those videos. She's not saying like, oh, sex work is awful, prostitution is awful, I should have never done that. Oh, this is reprehensible. I completely, I mean, because you know that she didn't do that, because if she had felt that way, she would never run for office in the first place. Because she would have just been like, okay, my past is too sordid. I have too many skeletons in my closet. I'm gonna step down and let someone else run. But no, she did it anyway. She posted at least one video after she announced, and she's defiant about it. She's like, I'm not in the wrong. You're in the wrong because you're trying to condemn me and trying to judge me. And it's like, I didn't do anything wrong. And so if someone is unrepentant of their sin, if someone, is trying to justify their sin, and someone is trying to say like, oh, I, I didn't do anything wrong, but I'm just trying to, move past it. Like, I think the problem with a lot of these porn stars is that they're like, oh, I'm so ashamed that people had to see me like that, and I don't want to move past that. But they never fully cross the bridge of saying like, other women should not follow in my footsteps. Other women should not do this. Porn should be illegal. We should ban it. They never go that far, or at least not most of the time. Maybe like one of them has said that maybe, but most of them don't say that. They're like, yeah, I regret doing that, and that might have not been the best decision, and I could have made better choices. But if you want to do that, that's fine. Different strokes for different folks. And it's like, no, it's not like this. I mean, this is so damaging to you as an individual, and not just you, but the people around you. Because a lot of these women, if they don't already, they want to have children, they want to have spouses, and this is an ink spot forever on your character, and it follows you and those around you. And it's like, it'd be so crazy as for someone to say like, yeah, I smoked crack and I wouldn't do that again. That might have been a misstep, but if you want to smoke crack, then you're more than welcome to. Who am I to tell you how to live? It's absurd. It's not good enough for you to say that something is bad for you, but other people should do said bad thing. Because if it's okay for them, then it must have been okay for you at the time. Like Black China, she's kind of out of the news right now, but a few months ago she was born again and getting baptized, and she was saying that she turned over a new leaf, and that never smelled right to me, because when she was interviewed, talking about, oh, should other women do OnlyFans? Oh, well, you gotta do what's right for you. You gotta get your bag. You gotta make your money. No, that is not good enough. And that not only discredits what you're doing, but it not only discredits what you're saying, but it discredits what you're doing. Because I don't take your so-called transformation seriously if that's the kind of attitude that you have. Oh, you're not serious. You're not really changed. You're older now, and you're just kind of done with that. Like, you haven't actually turned over a new leaf. You're just kind of changing your mind. You're just kind of, bored with what you were doing. And now you're like, I want to do something else now. But that's not good enough, because there are too many people, there are too many young women who are growing up thinking that porn is just going to be some quick, fast money, and they're going to be able to put their booty hole on the internet and get $500. And then when they're, done with that, it's going to be good, and they're going to be able to get a man and live a normal life after that. No. Would that it were so simple. But like I was saying, the internet is forever. And you think like just the other, maybe like 2 weeks ago now, on the Whatever podcast, and there was always, sex, I'm not going to use that term, sex workers, because it's meant to be less degrading, but it should be degraded. So these prostitutes, these hookers, these whores, they're always up there on whatever. And they think like, oh yeah, I'm 22 right now, but I'm gonna get out of porn and I'm gonna be a serious person and I'm gonna find my husband then. And it's like, no, it's not just gonna be you shut your laptop and all of a sudden your history is gone. These people are gonna be able to find pictures and videos of you forever, and it's always gonna be an ink spot on your life. And if not, and if you have a husband who's as crazy as Adam 22, then fine, you might be able to get a husband, but your children are gonna find out one day, and depending on how you raise them, if you brainwash them to think that's okay, then they're going to be ashamed of you. And what could be a worse outcome of your life than having children who are ashamed of you? Y'all, it's crazy. People really need to stand in the gap and really need to speak more boldly about this, and especially women. I feel like like with the whole Mel Tucker situation, like women need to speak out and call out these liars when it comes to sexual assault, and women need to speak out against all this sexual liberation junk. And hopefully, I'm gonna have a guest on in the next week or two to talk about feminism and just the cancer that has been on our society. And and it's like it's always been a cancer, from the beginning. And people are like, oh yeah, well, in the beginning when they were just fighting for voting rights and equal treatment and the law and society, that was fine. But then it kind of went off the rails. And it's like, no, from the jump, it's been an anti-family, anti-God movement, and it should be rejected out of hand by anyone calling himself a Christian. I would never call myself a feminist. I'm a housewife. I mean, I work a little bit. I take care of dogs, but I'm predominantly a housewife. I submit to my husband. I obey my husband, and I have a pretty good life. I'm very happy with the life that I live. There's nothing that I'm doing right now, as a housewife. These women, they think like, oh, I'm gonna live my life and I'm gonna have my fun, and then nothing's gonna, come back to bite me later on. If you're living the godly life, if you're living a housewife life, there's nothing that's gonna happen that's gonna come back to bite you. If you don't want to be a housewife anymore, you can actually stop doing that and go into the workforce and not have any serious consequences. Versus if you're a hot girl throughout all your early 20s, and then now that you're 28 and you're like, oh, I'm ready to settle down now, because you see that infamous wall in the distance. You're gonna have some history that's gonna linger with you, and it's gonna be an albatross around your neck, and you think that you're gonna be able to just pay somebody to wipe out all the photos and the videos from the internet, and that's just not legitimate. That's not real. And it's so toxic, and I hate it. Like David says, because I love the Lord, I hate every false way, and because I love people and I love women, I want to say these things that are going to shake them awake. You're ruining your life. Don't do that. There's a better way. You can make money and not whore yourself out for pennies. Because I mean, these women, they think that OnlyFans and they think that porn and all the different sex stuff, they think that that's just
Can you hear me now? I think you should be able to hear me now. Okay, it's showing up now. Oh no. Now I wonder if how much of that y'all even heard. Okay. Oh man. So now I don't even know how much y'all heard. But basically, I was saying that I was talking about the woman Suzanne Gibson, who's a running for Senate in Virginia, and she's a prostitute. And I was basically just saying how, she is deplorable and she needs to be rebuked, and how more women need to be um, talked to sternly about how, being a prostitute, being a sex worker, being a cam girl, an OnlyFans model, a porn star, all that stuff, those are not legitimate paths, as plan Bs, or God forbid, a plan A. Those are not valid ways of making money. You need to develop skills and want to actually better yourself, and those things should be just completely off the table. They should be shamed and ridiculed by society, so that way women don't destroy themselves, because that's what they're going to do if they go down these roads of, putting your butt and your breath online to just be ogled at and beg for money. So that's basically what I was saying. And so, and then the last thing I guess is that, Biden is allegedly getting impeached. um we'll see how that goes, because Republicans are not very good at actually persecuting their political opponents, but we'll see how that goes. And so, yeah, let me know what you guys think about the style of me running over the news, instead of necessarily speaking about a specific topic, like a Christian topic, but instead going over the news with a Christian perspective, because I like being able to give my opinion on, what's happening in the world around us, because we as Christians, we're not called to, be out of the world. We're supposed to, be in the world but be not of it. And so it's important that we see what's happening in the world around us, and we know what's going on, and we know how to react to it and what to say about it, because it's not going to get any better. And so I'm gonna head out. But after the live is done, please leave a comment, please leave a like, and subscribe if you already haven't. And I will talk to you guys next week, possibly on a different channel. So stay updated about that. I'll be posting about that on my socials. But yes, have a great rest of your week. And